Hey everybody, and welcome back to another video. As of now, I'm gonna be explaining the lore of my OC. I'm gonna charge my phone while I do it, but I'm afraid my phone might just explode in my face. So, this might, this might be short. So, my OC isn't actually a normal human. He's basically like a goo alien. You know, like the Venom symbiote? But he can't take control of people. So I guess I could say that his like lore is sort of like inspired by Sam's lore. You know, the OC made by Maria Arts. I'm just gonna explain it. So eventually, one night on the 6th of August in 2012, a scientist by the name of Hazel was like in her testing room and testing out random potions. She wasn't testing them on herself, but she was rather making them. Eventually, she heard a siren go off in the distance. It was not Siren Head, and it was and eventually she heard a loud rumble come from like near Earth. And also this was in the Philippines. This like story is like was entirely like in the Philippines. As in like the story happened within the Philippines. Alright, so eventually she went outside to find a large meteor. A large meteor like 50 feet away from her lab. She had to use a car. She had to use her car to get there. She got there and it was like already like 12 a.m. And then she examined the meteor and said in Tagalog, "Bakit ang laki ng meteor ng ito? Baka hindi meteor naman ito. Baka itlog sa ano yan sa the space creature." But actually, he's more of an English speaker. Eventually, the meteor started cracking. The meteor had small, minor cracks on its sides. Eventually, the meteor had bigger and bigger cracks until it split in half perfectly like an egg. Inside of it was a tiny blob, almost the size of a cat or a dog. The blob, the blob, was it? The blob squelched towards the blob like, what was it? Started moving towards the scientist and showed quite like affection by rubbing its head, rubbing its so-called quote unquote head onto its leg, onto her leg, just like a cat. She was so adored from that because it reminded her of her cat named Jerry that she used to have, but eventually died. Because she used to own that cat in 1997. And yes, my mom was also born in 1997. Pretty surprising, isn't it? She's like 46 years old already. Her birthday was on the 1st of July, like 2 days before the 4th of July. So, eventually, she decided to pick up the slime, and the slime instantly started crawling onto her arm and onto her shoulder. She walked back. She got in the car, and soon enough, as she got in the car, the blob started mutating. At first, the blob looked like a human made out of entirely slime. It had no clothes on. And my OC does not have any boy like male genitals, so I might add that in the future, but I'm not gonna, show any, scenes of him not having any clothes, because that wouldn't be nice. Eventually, the what is it? Yeah, the scientist sewed some new clothes for her new alien son. And yes, my OC, was taking care of a scientist. His his actual family was in outer space on another planet. Eventually, once they got home, she like let set she what is it? Put a new sort of like room around near her room, or she put like a box in the corner of her room so it makes her sleep in there. And Migs was actually like gurgling and talking in his alien language. Suddenly Hazel took out a translator and listened to the language, saying, and the alien said, "Give me KFC, please." And she decided that she should drive to KFC, but she knew that KFC was closed. So she decided to cook chicken of her own. She still had some leftover chicken in the freezer. She cooked it, and then Migs happily ate it. Eventually, he was quite sleepy, so he went into the room, hopped in the box, slowly melted, and then fell asleep. The next day, he started looking more human. He wasn't really that drippy anymore. Plus, he looked like an actual 10-year-old. And my OC may look like a 10-year-old, but he actually started existing in the 1990s. His species bloomed since he was the last part of his kind. But then he eventually found a female version of himself and eventually made it. And then eventually there was more. The next day, Migs woke up and decided to go to the kitchen to have a snack. He grabbed the leftover Kit Kat in the pantry and started munching on it while Hazel was still asleep. Hazel then woke up and heard the crunching noises from outside of her bedroom. She was horrified, thinking another thing must have broken into the house and ate Migs, since she thought Migs already had bones since he looked human. Turned out he only had organs, but the organs were also made out of that same goo. Eventually, she got out of bed, stormed out from the bedroom, and yelled, "Migs, what happened?" Migs looked at her, and he finally spoke. He spoke in a normal human language. "What? I was just eating Kit Kats." And then Hazel was like, "You can't just eat Kit Kats early in the morning. You still have to eat breakfast." And he's like, "Oh, yeah, wait, do you have any cereal?" And then she's like, "Yeah, I have Fruit Loops." And he's like, "Fruit Loops? Those are my favorite. I actually used to have another cereal that's tasted the same as the Fruit Loops on my planet. Eventually, they ate Fruit Loops together in the morning. Eventually, she decided to let Migs play outside of the lab. Migs then at least, brought like a GPS like tracker thing, and he put it He sort of absorbed it, and now it's inside him. So he could go anywhere, like for being without getting lost or anything. So I'm talking silent because my mom was in the room. Oh no, I was afraid she was gonna ask me what I was talking about. So eventually, Mix went to a nearby school and looked through the windows into the classrooms. He eventually met a new friend named Caden. He looked like a bi a bipedal no wait an anthropomorphic kitsune. He he said hi in a human language, and Caden said hi as well. They decided to become friends. Eventually, they met another kid named Kirzek. He was a stick man with bacon for hair. He waved at them, and they decided to become friends. Now the three, now the the trio decided to walk and play in the playground. Eventually, was caught by his Miggs was caught by someone named Aenmore. Aenmore approached Miggs and said, "Hey, ugly, you new here?" And he said, "Hey," and then he said, "Hey, I'm not ugly." He's like, "Well, you are, because I'm about to make you." And then he punched Miggs in the face, but his face only got liquefied. Miggs' face only got liquefied, and his head splattered against the ground like some sort of scene out of a horror movie. Eventually, Miggs regenerated his head since he has amphibious powers. He has amphibic powers. He's like fake Peppino, alright? He actually shares some like symbiotic relationship with fake Peppino. I'm not saying that he likes fake Peppino, but I'm saying that they're genetically related. Eventually, Miggs couldn't take it. He got really mad and released a xenomorph-like screech. Miggs grew a claw and scratched Aenmore in the face. Aenmore whimpered like an injured dog and then ran away crying, hoping that he would never see Miggs again. Eventually, Miggs got used to him being around and eventually was able to dodge all his attacks. Miggs doesn't always go to school because he doesn't need school. He's already learned everything from using strange alien satellites to study the Earth. Miggs eventually started getting used to his new world. He eventually found new areas to go. And that's when he met his first ever and that's when he met his first ever famous YouTuber. Caden was already a famous YouTuber, but he met another one. It was they eventually bumped into each other in the sidewalk, and then Miggs stared at the figure that was standing above him while he was on the ground, what is it? Falling, what is it? Like kneeling and like having like a scratch on his arm. I don't even know what I'm saying. So it was basically Sam, the TV droid. I don't know. I sound like a creaking door. Eventually, she helped him up, and then eventually this decided to become friends. Also, this is not a canon. This is canon, but when me and Maria Arts are not actually friends. We just I first bumped into her when I was scrolling through YouTube, and I decided to do something for her that would make her happy and make her day. So eventually, one day Migs decided to go out in the woods during 2018. Eventually, that time, his Hazel, the scientist, was 52 years old. Actually, she was like 46. And then he eventually went into the woods, and along with Kirazik and Kaden, he brought camping gear with him as well as tents. He wanted to camp in the woods, he said. And Kaden, Kirazik, and Migs ventured out into the woods and stayed there for the night. At 1:30 a.m., Migs woke up to a strange noise that sounded like footsteps. Loud, loud thunder like footsteps. But it didn't sound like thunder at all. He then started hearing an emergency siren and a broadcast. The broadcast was saying, "This is not a test. An emergency has been reported by the Philippine County. An unknown threat has entered your area. Evacuate immediately." Eventually, he heard static, and then the siren got louder and louder. He got out of the he what is it? He bolted out of the tent and looked and pulled out a flashlight. He opened it and he saw what eventually would become his new friend, a 40-foot tall monster storming towards the campsite. The monster was screaming out random words. 9, 18, 16, 54, 204. For child, woman, vile. Migs eventually decided to pull out a random shotgun he had in his bag and said, "Take this, you monstrosity!" He fired the shotgun. The shotgun lit up the chest of Siren Head. Siren Head roared in pain. Eventually, Migs woke up the others, and then Siren Head eventually spoke. He said, "Man, I was just looking for food. You guys look delicious." He said, "Bro, you can talk?" And he said, "Yeah." Also, that was a swear word that he censored by doing static. It was like, "Hey, that's coarse language." He says, "I'm legit older than you, bro. I'm like 44,000 years old." It was like, and then Mace was super surprised. He was like, "Oh, so, can I call you my father? Because my mother is at home." He was like, "What? A father? Maybe, I guess. I don't know. No, but maybe not. That'd be too awkward." Sorry. So eventually, Siren Head meets Kaden, Lou, and Gearsix went out of the forest with everything packed in their bags. But Siren Head didn't have a bag. He didn't have anything on him. You could only see his skin. Siren Head was walking peacefully across the forest with Kaden, Lou, Mace, and Gearsix. Eventually, they made it to a nearby McDonald's. They decided to order a large burger along with some shake fries and 3 apple pies. Eventually, they ordered a meal with a 6-piece chicken. They sat down at their table. Siren Head couldn't really fit, so he had to stay outside and eat some chicken. Eventually, they were done eating, and then they decided to, leave the McDonald's and then go back to the forest where they camped. They then told stories around the campfire, and that's the end of chapter 1. I will see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.